150, 160. He's gone.
Alright, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing this cover here to drain all the oil out. Now you have these oil drains, but we want to make sure we get all the metal particles out. So we're going to clean it out on the inside, spray it out, and then we're going to remove the governor. The governor actually sits back here, and basically once it's removed, the engine will rev up to about 5,500 RPM before you get valve float. Now there is a torque spec on these bolts. I don't know what it is offhand, so I just went ahead and marked them with a Sharpie so I can put them back the way they were. And other than that, these are 10 millimeters, so we're just going to go ahead and remove them. You can see I got the engine. We're going to go ahead and do that. Tilt the engine all the way down. It's nice that nothing's leaking. There's no gas leak, nothing like that. That's pretty good design. So let's just go ahead and break all these bolts loose and take the cover off. And one thing I already did is I removed this, the key from the crank. And I just set it aside. It's very important you hang on to that because you're going to need it to get the clutch in place correctly. So there we go. Now that we got all those bolts loosened, use the ratchet. Get this cover up off of here. And it's just this seal right there on the crank is in pretty good shape. So unfortunately we tore our little gasket here, but just RTV that back into place in a little bit. So there's kind of the inside. You got a nice little crank bearing. And you can see, I don't know if you can see this yet or not, but there is quite a bit of little silver flake down in the oil. And that's what I was talking about earlier. The other thing that you can do, a lot of people do to make more power, is you can actually, this is your cam right here, and you can actually remove this guy and put in a higher duration cam. So down there is a little gear, that little lever arm right there is what controls the whatchamacallit, the governor, and that's what we're going to be removing down in there. So I'm going to basically turn off the camera here for a second. I'm going to drain all the oil out of this into our pan, clean up this gasket surface, and then we can begin removing the governor. So here's just kind of another shot. You can see out here in the sunlight all of that metal flake that just came out of this engine. So normally if you saw that on like a regular engine, I would say that you spun a bearing or something of that nature. But on these Chinese castings, that's just the way they start out. So I was hoping we could get away with doing this without removing the gas tank, but it looks like the gas tank is going to have to come off for this to work. And that's going to be, let's see, these two 10 millimeter nuts right here. That's it. And of course this is our breather line, and the actual fuel line is down here, and so this is about to probably make a bit of a mess. And so here's our fuel line, here's our breather line, and now this is, so what happens is when you're over here, and here's your throttle, right? So that's all the way slow, that's all the way fast. And what happens is this lever pushes down and causes the restriction to speed at the top end. So now we're going to be able to disassemble this and basically just remove this whole assembly. As far as I understand, we remove this whole arm and all of the inside. So I'm going to go check something real quick, and we'll get right to it. Okay, So we're actually going to be removing this entire assembly here. And so first you want to remove this little spring right here. And this little spring right here. This one wants to come out a little easier. Now we just got to force this arm up like that. Just pop it right off. And that'll let us take that off. So we're just going to set this whole assembly aside. So now that we have this off, we can just let this sit over here for a moment. I'm going to set this back over on its side. And now we should be able to finagle this arm out of here. Although we may need to rotate the crank to let us fish that out. There we go. So that's come out. Now we got to just remove this entire little gear assembly. And the way you do it, from my understanding, is there's actually a little clip right. Oops. So first you take out this little white piece. Then there is a little washer there. We're going to grab our magnet to help retrieve that. There we go. Washer is out. And now, right in there, I hope the camera can catch it. But right there, there is a little circlip. And that circlip is the last piece. Once you get that out, you can reassemble everything. We're going to find a bolt to put in there that's just going to block it up. Now, unfortunately, there's not really a clever way of getting this circlip out, at least not one that I know of. And so you just gotta have to finagle with it until you get it to pop. Well, after mutilating the absolute fuck all out of this, I realized that if I rotated the crank over, it'd probably be a lot easier. Then it came right out. So once you get that out, there's one more washer back there that we gotta get out. That's it. And so now we just got to find something to fill this bolt hole with, wash out the inside, and then we can RTV this and put the cover back on. And then later on, if I want to, I can always pull out the cam. And the way that works is if I, there we go, where is it? Right there, those two dots line up. I can just pop out the performance cam and put a new one in later, and springs and stuff if I need to. But honestly, I think this is probably going to be enough power all on its own, and it's nice and quiet too. I know that may seem kind of counterproductive, but generally speaking, this sort of behavior takes place in parking lots where you're not really supposed to be at. And so having actually a quiet motor can prolong the amount of hooliganism that you can have before the police show up. So I'm going to get all that gunk out of there. And then I think our engine... Oh, then we have to put the throttle piece on, but then we should be ready to reassemble and get it all mocked up. Alright, so now that we got the side cover on, this is the main throttle piece that I bought. And what this does is your cable goes in here, and this acts as your pivot point. And what we do is we loosen this nut, and so you can see you have full control here. And right here, so over here is maximum engine speed, minimum engine speed. Alright, for something that I thought was going to be super duper simple, this turned out to be a super huge pain in the ass. So, look at this crazy linkage that we have to use to run the throttle on this thing. basically the cable will come in here and will attach here, and then this will go like that, and that will be your throttle control. Now we have a throttle stop here, we have a throttle stop here, but just to realize what this is. So this linkage connects here, and this is all part of a kit. This is the standard arm that you normally adjust engine speed with right here, and it has a provision here that I had to make this little piece of metal, and this right here is the arm that used to control the governor. So you have to reinstall the shaft from the governor. I cut off the end of it, put this heavy duty spring here so it snaps back nicely, get good throttle feedback. This spring I don't think is actually necessary, but it was originally part of the system, so I included it. And all of that drives this. So basically this goes in this direction, this goes in the opposite direction, and because of that we have to have this double arm linkage. So now the motor is done. I can put the intake and the air filter back on and fill it up with oil, and we'll see if it runs. And we have a idle set screw here as well that I just realized about. So let's get this reassembled and see if I can mock it up and get it at least mocked up on the car. Well, there we go. It's back all assembled. One thing you want to look out for is I had to reset the idle adjustment screw back in here a little bit higher to get it to run. But let me fire up and show you guys the difference now that we have a controlled throttle. Oops. So much torque, twist the chassis off the line. Actually my bolts just fell out, but there you go. So this is done. I had helped my neighbor with some stuff, so I'm pretty exhausted. So I don't think we're getting it mocked up on the frame today. But, well, we'll be, part 3, we'll be getting this motor mounted, getting everything fully welded, and hopefully getting most of it assembled. Unfortunately, it looks like this cable is probably not going to be long enough. It's the one that came with it. So I'm going to have to go and buy some aircraft cable and a few other things, but we're moving right along with this little project.